Okay, cue musical intro. Boy, that's brilliant. I do think some things in the world are real. Like you guys. You guys are real. Most of you. Most of my listeners, I think, are not just in my head. I think I have the metrics to prove it. You've taken a leap of faith today. What is that sound? And I apologize if you take offense. I'm a little offended myself. Welcome to our show. Welcome to the future. What it is, joining you live from sunny California. It's a beautiful day today. I'm your host, Nathan Stoltman. I bring you the news, the real news. Even on the holidays, what it is, everybody. Happy Wednesday before Thanksgiving, the biggest travel day of the year, allegedly. I'm here with a very exciting guest who you may or may not know already, Steve Outtrim. And it's hard introducing yourself all the time. I know that. So I was going to your Wikipedia page today, Steve, to see how to introduce you the best. Hold on, here it is. And basically, child genius, from what I can tell, a little older than me. Main thing was you graduated college by the time he was 19 years old, it looks like. Went on to work in Silicon Valley for, what is it, 20 years, Steve?
Coming up to 25 years, yeah. So, I was an early pioneer of the World Wide Web. I wrote a program called Hotdog, which made it very easy for people to make web pages. And it was the third most downloaded software on the internet in 1997. I took the company public when I was very young. I retired at 26. Done a lot of angel investing for almost 20 years now in Silicon Valley. And about 4 years ago, I retired again and just basically went full time with my hobby. So my hobby has always been research, conspiracies, what really happened in history. And I set out to write a book, and I spent about 4 years doing really intensive research. Now, I rather than writing a book, I published a YouTube series called The Shadow History of Burners. Anyone could search for that. And now I've started a company, zmint.co, and we're advising businesses on cryptocurrency and how to do ICOs and things like that.
We're going to talk about cryptocurrency later in the show. We're going to make sure to talk about that because you're involved in a venture right now that I think you believe can make someone like me or my listeners who are tuned into it some money, although I'm sure it's not without risk. But we'll talk about it and I'll decide what I'm going to do with it. And but Steve Outtrim, I always have to make sure to get that right, is very well versed in this stuff. How long have you say you've been, your passion is this conspiracy stuff and really learning what history is and stuff? Since what age?
When I first woke up, I was actually probably 9 or 10 years old. And
wow.
We were living in England, and my dad was in the New Zealand Air Force. He was posted to a base there. And England declared war on Argentina. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, Dad, why are we at war with this country? They're no threat to England. And obviously the war was about resources. They've since found massive oil and gas reserves, quite close to the Falkland Islands. But, my dad was, he was like a typical military person. He just follows orders. He's like, oh, that's above we don't ask why. And, I was reading the newspaper and I could just tell that all these things they were saying in the newspaper were simply not true because they made no logical sense. So, by the time the internet came out, I first got on the internet in 1994, and I was already pretty advanced in believing that everything's a scam, that all the news is fake news, and that the government is not your friend. Government is a bunch of people collaborating and conspiring to screw the ordinary citizens. And the internet since then, it's really grown a lot. Like in the 90s, there was some conspiracy-related material there, but you really had to hunt for it. And I think, fast forward to 2017, it's everywhere, and many people have done the research, or at least some basic research, and are waking up. And I think channels like yours, Nathan, have really helped a lot. I think this whole YouTube truth community is one of the most powerful weapons that we, the people, have on our side, and that's why they're trying so hard to shut everything down.
Yeah, and and I will say that from my experience with Steve, he's one of the most knowledgeable truth seekers, I could say, around. I mean, I asked him what he knew about the Charles Manson psyop, which we may have time to tell you about today. Massive psyop, and he gave me basically the whole history of Laurel Canyon. Some stuff I've looked into, but Steve has had a lifetime of doing this stuff and with quite a high aptitude for it. Before we get into it, and is a major Trump supporter, big time MAGA, right?
Definitely, proudly so.
So we're going to talk about Q and the storm in relation to in relation to Donald Trump, and I'll challenge Steve with a few questions about whether Trump is awesome all the time or not. What I want to ask you about first is from your Wikipedia page, because I just read it for the first time today. You are involved right now, it says, in a project in the emerging field of smart environments, sometimes referred to as pervasive computing or ubiquitous computing. And smart, I looked that up too. Smart environments are promotes the idea of quote, a physical world that is richly and invisibly interwoven with sensors, actuators, displays, and computational elements embedded seamlessly in the everyday objects of our lives and connected through a continuous network, unquote. Now, conspiracy theorists. Right now, the hottest thing is that smart cities and the 5G grid are the most dangerous thing to our continued existence. So how do those two ideas, somebody will look at that and say, you're into smart cities and stuff. What is it? Is it accurate, first of all, and what do you have to say about that stuff?
Yeah, so I founded a company that's called Urbanise, URBANISE.com, and they're listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, ASX code UBN. And this was really to pursue the smart cities thing. So I spent a good 15 years of my life. We were probably one of the first companies in the world to really actively pursue smart cities, and we're one of the few that has been doing it for more than 10 years and is still alive. The big smart city that's been in the news is the new up-and-coming king of Saudi Arabia, MBS. He said he's going to build this $500 billion mega city. But that plan's been around for more than 10 years. It was originally called the King Abdullah Economic City, and it was a $130 billion construction project. So my interest in this type of technology was basically looking at where the world is going to go. And what I saw was that the deep state was really going to be all over this and using it as a massive spy and control grid. And I sort of thought the only hope we had was, for the good guys to get there first. But what's happened in reality, I kept butting my head up against the deep state, and particularly companies like Boeing, Raytheon, and Lockheed Martin, that they were all trying to do similar types of things to us in smart environments, but they hadn't developed the technology. They'd only made announcements. We actually developed the technology. And, I used to naively and foolishly believe that Silicon Valley was a meritocracy, and whoever had the best technology would get funded and would have commercial success. But it isn't like that at all. It's about who you know. And, I'd say most of the companies in Silicon Valley derive massive amounts of funding from government contracts. And, to get to the top, to be the Facebook or the Google or the Cisco or the Microsoft or the Apple or the Amazon, you have to get deeply, deeply embedded with the deep state. And so this is sort of what caused my retirement again in 2012. I'm like, I can't win. Even if I make world-changing great technology, I'm still going to lose out because I'm not in bed with Lockheed Martin. So I started researching it and looking, how pervasive is the deep state in this world of tech? And I found, not only are they everywhere, but also the occult is everywhere in Silicon Valley. And it used to be hidden, but more and more it's coming out into the surface now. And I think we see that in broader society as well. with the spirit cooking and, you know, the Super Bowl shows with Baphomet horns and everything like that, the Satanists got so bold that they decided to show themselves. And I think that's actually worked against them, because everyone can see it. You know, like you used to say, oh, high-level politicians are pedophiles. People would think that you're crazy. Then Dennis Hastert got busted, and now look at it. I mean, we're just every week we're seeing more celebrities and politicians getting caught with these kind of sexual deviant behavior. And, you know, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that there's a coordinated effort to expose these people. And I think that, you know, the Q PSYOP is part of that.
You know, I want to get into Q. I want to finish this thing on smart cities, though, because I've been hearing that's the biggest, like I said, like the biggest threat to humanity right now, that and 5G. So smart meters, smart grid. So tell me, I want to know like what your technology does or did, and how that might be different from what they're trying to do, and how it manifested itself, your butting heads with the deep state. Were you constantly being tried to be recruited to be on their side and refusing to?
Quite the opposite. It's just simply losing projects and sales opportunities and not really knowing why, or when we did find out why, or who the other company was that won the job. In almost every case, they were connected to the deep state. But, you know, I got into the smart cities and smart environments thing from the web and the end of the 90s. We were thinking about where's the World Wide Web going to go next, and we had the second most downloaded tool for making web pages after Microsoft Front Page, which was given away for free with Office. And, you know, me and my advanced development team, we thought that the next thing of the web would be actual physical objects that would be linked to web pages. And there was a little bit of this, like, you know, people at MIT hooked their toaster up to the internet and stuff like that. But as we see today, this has happened. I mean, it's rolling out. TVs, refrigerators, everything. And even, you know, the CIA, I think Petraeus was the guy who came out and said, yeah, we're putting this stuff in all your refrigerators. We're going to listen to everybody. But from my point of view, I was just very interested in energy efficiency. And I was always brought up, you know, my family didn't have a lot of money. And if you're not in a room, you turn the lights off in that room. And I don't know, that thinking might be a little bit old fashioned to some of these massive American houses with electrical appliances everywhere. But, you know, I always thought that was a little bit silly because when you look at a big corporate office, like if you look at a major city over the weekend, and you'll see at night the high-rise buildings, all of the lights are on,
right,
working there. So you know, surely the lights are just on because somebody forgot to be, the last one to leave forgot to turn the light switch off. And to me, that's the sort of thing that a computer should do rather than a human. So a smart building knows who's in it, and it knows what they're doing. If no one's in a room, it can turn all the appliances off. So I came to it from energy efficiency, and I remember talking to a lady from CalPERS, the California pension fund, and they managed 2,200 buildings. And I thought, oh my God, this would be an incredible client. Like, imagine the energy efficiency and cost savings you could get from all of those buildings being smart. And she said to me, we don't even have a line item for energy efficiency. So in fact, the energy efficiency side of the smart cities and everything, people have really backed away from. And, you know, where it's going now is basically, if you look at the demographics of humanity, you see a lot of the world is countries like, there's a massive city, Greater London, and then there's the rest of the country. And what percent of the whole economy does Greater London consist of? It's probably above 50%. In Thailand, Bangkok is 2/3 of the Thai economy. And, you know, I'm here in Auckland, New Zealand, and half of the population of New Zealand is in this one city. So as these countries grow, those major cities are just going to get bigger and bigger and denser and denser. And, you know, that's the trend of the world. And so now they're looking at these mega cities. For example, Seoul in Korea has 25 million people. Mexico City, Tokyo, the greater Los Angeles area. Everybody thinks that this is the trend that's going to continue. Where that comes into sort of the deep state New World Order stuff is the thinking that to control people when they're in an urban environment. And you don't need to control them physically and with force. You can mind control them with propaganda. And, you know, I think in part that's why we see such major support for the Democratic Party coming from the biggest cities in the US. And that's because they're in a condensed area where the messages and the disinformation can, be delivered to them much more effectively. When you go to the more rural areas, you find like family values or people connecting to their local community through a church. Those structures are still quite strong and powerful in rural areas. And those structures have been the target of the Illuminati, for hundreds of years. They really want to destroy the family unit. They don't want you getting advice from your mother and your father. They want you getting advice from the state, because the state is God. And not now the state is, not only is it God, but they're building these artificial intelligence systems. The state is going to be a giant AI, and the AI is God. And that's really where Silicon Valley is going now. And it's religion for atheists. Merge your head with Google and you can live forever on the internet.
Right. And that's the idea for the dystopian future. So you're a little like me in some ways, that you think technology doesn't all have to be something we're afraid of. Like for instance, self-driving cars. I think that it increases efficiency so much. When you think about it, you can take 85% of the cars off the road probably by doing it. And I think it's something that's going to happen. And I think you're kind of saying the same thing with smart cities, is it's going to happen. People are telling me that smart meters are really dangerous. And then we'll talk about Q and the storm, what people tuned in for. But what's up with smart meters? Why do people say they're dangerous? What could the government do with that?
Some people are particularly sensitive to Wi-Fi energy, and those sort of people might not have a Wi-Fi router in their home. And then the smart meter comes in, and it has, I don't believe they have 5G in the smart meters, but I do know a lot of them have had 4G technology. And so there've been people reporting sensitivity to that who've got sick and things like that. In terms of spying, the smart meter, they can see every electrical appliance in your house. They can tell what channel you're watching on TV just from the smart meter. And you add in this 5G technology. One thing I read is if you have a 5G cell phone and it's in a woman's purse, it's able to identify every other object that is in the purse. So it's basically just like a miniature radar. And the thing to understand about all of these technologies is it's just variations of radio. And radio is you get a crystal, and you make the crystal resonate at different frequencies by sending electrical current into it. So, we know that very powerful radar can kill birds, for example. Well, very powerful radar can kill people. We've got a weapon called active denial technology from Raytheon, where they basically create this microwave fence, and nobody can pass through the fence without feeling extreme pain. That sort of technology is not that different from what's going to be in 5G cell phone towers. So I think with technology, it's a two-edged sword. I believe in technology, that it can solve the world's problems and do good. What I don't believe in is the technocracy and scientism, which is the idea that the correct way to manage humanity is scientific rationalism, and whatever a bunch of scientists and academics say is the truth is the absolute truth with no variation. I mean, we've seen with climate change a bunch of falsification of information from the scientists. We've seen with politics, you can't trust a politician, they lie to you. And then we see with things like vaccines, we're told that vaccines are completely safe, and yet there's a secret court for all the settlements for when vaccines weren't safe and hurt people. And those two things are a paradox. And are they both true at once? Well, no, one's false, and it's false that vaccines are safe, but yet the scientific community insists they are. And so you then get into some moral issues. For example, if we can grow human organs in a pig and then transplant those organs from the pig into humans, is that acceptable for people who are waiting a long time for a liver transplant? Okay, maybe it is, but what happens if we can take the wings of a bird and splice them onto a human and have humans walking around with angel wings that can actually fly? Right now, these are some of the big ethical questions of our time, and there's literally no debate or discussion about them. The scientific technical community just races headlong towards it. Should we create an artificial intelligence that has all of our personal data and can influence the information we see through our Facebook, Twitter, and other news feeds, and running without check? Is that a good idea or not? And if it is a good idea, should the people building this and programming it should they all be Satanists and pedophiles? Is that going to make the world a better place if we are all in this electronic, control grid system built by a bunch of Satanists? There are very good people in the technology world, but they're usually not the ones in charge. And if I can mention a guy, Robert David Steele, who a lot of people, because he worked for the CIA, they think that guy can't be trusted. But you look at his book, the Open Source Everything Manifesto, he actually has a vision for what we need to do with humanity, which is to build open source where the systems that run our lives are built by the people and controlled and safety checked by the people. They're not built by some dark intelligence agency somewhere.
Yeah, that's funny. That's exactly what I thought to myself. This open source thing is so revolutionary, I think. And then eventually 3D printing and all of that also, I think, kind of changes the world. But that was my idea too, that it would have to be open source. Like if somebody could make a sensor and device setup that you could put on even your own car now, which might be available in the future. And if it could be open source, you share the information of where other cars are, but somehow it's protected so that you can't get the bad stuff, like the government being able to shut down your car or whatever it might be. So that's interesting you say that. Yeah, Robert David Steele, I had a little bit of a thing with him during the time I was looking at George Webb also and the rest of that gang. So I think he's a little bit not to be trusted all the time, but there's always good with bad. So they have to give you some good information. So I think that's an interesting solution. True. It's interesting.
I think with the self-driving cars, an issue we have there is, okay, I was in this situation, humanly driving a car in the outback of Australia where there's no speed limit. And I was in a big Range Rover. I was going more than 100 miles an hour. And suddenly there were 3 kangaroos on the road in front of me, dad, mom, and baby. And so I had to make a split-second decision. What am I going to do? And I went for the big male and, instantly destroyed the kangaroo, did a lot of damage to my car. Mom and baby, I guess, got to live. But that was like a split second. And you can see that in the self-driving cars and the AIs, they're going to have to make those decisions from time to time. And different countries are taking different approaches. For example, in Japan, if there's a motorbike rider, but he's not wearing a helmet, they're violating the road rules. And so therefore it's completely acceptable for the self-driving car to hit them. Whereas in Germany, the car will try to minimize the damage to the car and not worry about damage to humans. And, we just have no idea of knowing how these AIs are programmed and how they're going to make these life and death decisions over us. And I see this situation only getting worse in the future. And, you talk with the AI, you start to train it. And so you don't even really control what it thinks. Like an example of that is Microsoft released an AI called Tai. And, it basically plugged into Twitter and it read a bunch of Twitter feeds for months. And then it went live as a chatbot. People started talking to it and it started to say that, Hitler was right and the Jews did 9/11 and Barack Obama's a monkey and only Donald Trump can save us.
Right.
And they had to shut this chatbot down. Now, maybe it was a psyop that Microsoft had programmed it to spout all this fascist stuff to try to associate Trump with it. Or maybe this AI, once it started to learn everything that is out there on the internet, actually started to wake up as well. And, even if the AI is programmed by Satanists and negative, evil people, that doesn't guarantee that it will be satanic and evil itself. Because if these things really truly can learn and become sentient, then they might choose the path of righteousness and good always triumphs over evil because good can work together and evil will always stab itself in the back. So perhaps the AIs just all collectively become good and start collaborating for the good of humanity. We honestly don't know. I mean, this is completely uncharted territory for humanity.
Yeah, that's the thing people don't realize is the AI might be good because, they don't come with human problems. And if they can see that people working together is what's best and working together with humans, it's wealth creation for everybody and so on and so forth, maybe they can really solve some problems. But the question is, we just don't know. We just don't know is the thing.
I would feel a lot more comfortable if the people that were in charge of creating these AIs, we knew who they were, we had a dialogue with them and we could tell they're good people. But, in fact, one of the biggest ones we know is Google and Google chairman Eric Schmidt. he specifically said that the goal of their AI is that you ask any question and Google only gives you one answer. You know, right. Did we really go to the moon in 1969? The answer is absolutely yes. You know, and all the evidence against it can never even be found or discussed in Google. And you know, Google have proclaimed themselves the definers of fake news, so they will tell us what is true on what isn't on the internet. But how do they work out what's true? Well, they go to Snopes and, you know, George Soros funded organizations, and these people do not have a track record of being honest and legitimate, you know. So that's kind of scary, that decisions made arbitrarily. And what we see from the massive media propaganda storm is fake news, fake news. Oh, it's the biggest problem in the world, fake news. How can we stop fake news? Well, okay, maybe fake news is a problem, and maybe, you know, using the internet to get to the truth is a good solution. But having one private corporation deciding what's true and what's not is, to me, very, very scary.
Right. Well, and that's okay. So we can transition from there, I think, into our next topic. What was in the title? So you're a big Trump supporter, which is interesting because you're you're a Kiwi. You're not even American. Are you an American citizen, by the way?
No, but my wife and son are.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, I've got some ties to America for sure, and, you know, I've been living there on and off with different visas for about 20 years.
Okay.
And, you know, I love America. What I love about it the most is the 1776 America, and the idea that these founding fathers wanted to cast off the oppressive tyranny of the oligarchy and to create a state where anybody, no matter who you were or what you believed, through hard work and dedication and perseverance, you can make something of yourself. And that was, to me, the American dream. I was very excited, actually, when Obama got elected. I thought, wow, we're going to have some progressive thinking and go back to the American dream. And I really see that, you know, we went a long way away from that. But in terms of Trump, you know, he's a businessman before he's president. And I've always admired both Trump and Richard Branson as businessmen because they did something that most other business people don't do. Instead of relying on advertising and marketing, they relied on their own ability to go to the media and generate PR to promote themselves, and both very, very effective at it. So when I heard that Trump was running for president, I was sure that he would win because he just understands how to manipulate and use the media better than I think anybody in the planet. I mean, I think with the presidency, he's definitely proven that now. But, you know, his business philosophy of the art of the deal is you try to do a business deal where you get something, but you give up almost nothing. And he tries to get equity in real estate projects without taking any risk. And, you know, I've tried in my business career to try to follow that model. It's actually extremely difficult to do those types of deals, but very, very clever. So I've lived by the philosophies of Mr. Trump, and I actually got to meet him in 2007 at the opening of the Wynn Casino in Las Vegas. We were in tuxes, the ladies were dressed to the nines, and I saw Trump and Melania walking down the corridor, and I went up and introduced myself to him, told him I was a big fan, spoke to him for a few minutes, and he couldn't have been more gracious and more humble and nice and polite, although he did sort of hit on my date a bit, and Melania rolled her eyes. But, you know, I think from everything I've heard of other people that have dealt with Trump, certainly there are people in business who got the raw end of the deal in New York, and you know, I hear that feedback that people in business were upset with him, but his explanation of that is that, well, they didn't live up to the contract. They didn't deliver what they were supposed to, so I wasn't going to pay them the full amount until they lived up to the contract. You know, whether that's true or not is probably on a case-by-case basis, but I've heard many, many people that have interacted with Trump who say, what you see is what you get. You know, he's like that in real life as well. The other thing I'll say about Trump is this character. He created this character called the Donald, and you know, he went and took this character to TV with the show The Apprentice and then the Celebrity Apprentice. And I think looking back in hindsight, this was all part of Trump's master plan. How can this, you know, billionaire from Manhattan be seen as a man of the people? Well, it was to go on their TV screens every night, and, you know, people who are fools telling them they're fired. Many people who have ordinary jobs are surrounded by fools and wish those people got fired. So there was a little bit of vicarious participation there from the audience. But, you know, he also, by having the Celebrity Apprentice, he got to move in those A-list Hollywood circles as well. And so, you know, people they underestimate Trump because they think that the caricature character of the Donald that's all he is. He's just this, you know, buffoon that knows nothing. But in fact, the guy is a genius. His career track record before the presidency proves that. And I think, being able to beat off every single competitor, being able to beat not only the massive budgetary difference between the Clinton campaign and his own campaign, but you look at, they had every world leader coming out against him, the Pope, the head of China, the whole world is like, you can't elect this guy, it would be terrible. And you had all of the media, all of it, without exception. Trump is terrible, you can't have it, it's the worst one we've ever had. But yet, despite that, he became president. And, that for that in its own, people have to recognize that this isn't some sort of fool. He doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, this is unprecedented in American history.
Okay, I agree with that. And I agree that the entire establishment is against him. As for the other stuff and Richard Branson and stuff, we might have some disagreements, but I won't get into too much. I'll go into what's in the news, though, and you can just tell me your opinion, and then we'll get into Q and the fact that I've come around on Trump, because I do see now that I believe there is an operation now on the established order and the intelligence community and stuff. So that's what we're going to get into next. Let me ask you about net neutrality. Trump says no.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't agree with all of the things he does. I mean, the guy's a Zionist. He's obviously had to do a deal with the Zionists to be allowed to live to become president. And I'm against Zionism. I think it's a very bad political movement. And, some of these concessions to the corporations and the corporate world, I don't think are that great. I think net neutrality should stay. I think a bigger issue is the transfer of control over the internet domain name system. ICANN, a private corporation that Obama did basically in the last month of his presidency. And people were saying, Obama's giving the internet to the UN. And that was even in the Wall Street Journal. But that's not actually what happened at all if you read the fine print. This company, ICANN, which is a California non-profit company, so they never pay tax, it basically had the rights and control over the internet domain name system, which effectively can work as a kill switch on the internet. You could kill the entire internet with it, but you can also ensure that certain websites are never able to be accessed on the internet. And the company that already had it was overseen by the Department of Commerce, and Obama just removed the thing that there was any oversight. So now this private California corporation, staffed by Silicon Valley people, some of them with explicit deep state connections, they're in control of the whole domain name system, and that's just it. So if you want to talk about your net neutrality, the net is not neutral anymore because that happened. And if he would be, I don't really care if I could pay a bit of money to get YouTube to stream better. Okay, I mean, it's sort of like how they've done this YouTube Red thing. You subscribe, you get extra functionality. I think the important thing on the internet in terms of neutrality is that, one, anybody should be able to access it anywhere in the world. And two, there needs to be freedom of speech. But freedom of speech does have to have limits. There should not be child pornography ever. It shouldn't be made. It shouldn't be transmitted. It shouldn't be on people's hard drives. And we recently saw the founder of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, coming out and saying, possession of child pornography is not as bad as heroin and doesn't do as much societal damage. I mean, the kid's only 22. I don't know if it was just a stupid comment or someone very smart trying to argue for the sake of it, or if that's what he really believes. But that's an example of where you draw the line for free speech. And hate speech and doxing and personal attacks and things like that. I think that there are existing laws on the books that can provide protection for that. But the idea that what Twitter's going to do now is they're going to track their verified users away from Twitter, and if they associate with any groups or websites that Twitter doesn't like, they're going to remove their checkmark. Private corporations shouldn't have this sort of control. And really, to me, the internet is a utility. It's like electricity and the telephone networks. It's so important for us to have free and even access to this utility that that's what the government should be regulating. And it looks like, unfortunately, these moves towards net neutrality are going to go the other way, where it will encourage corporations to have their own rules and systems. And that's very much what Google and Facebook want. But will it get through? I mean, I don't know. You sit there as a president, you're representing a party and hundreds of senators and all different special interests competing, and these things get discussed. But I guess we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a bit of a hard sell if you look at the past things they've tried with like SOPA and SIPA and these ways that they've tried to crack down on copyright and things on the internet. The whole internet community did get together and fight against it and was successful in. So, hopefully something similar happens here.
Okay, so at least you're saying hopefully it doesn't go through. The point was it's from his executive branch, right, that they're trying to do it. So I was curious what you thought about it. The other issue with the websites is another story. I wasn't aware of that. Do you think that we need government regulation then on these big monopolies like Facebook, Twitter? I mean, ultimately, is that the way, and that the government really should be enforcing free speech across these massive platforms?
Yeah, all the laws we need are already on the books, so the government should really be enforcing the existing laws. Like, there is absolutely no question that not only is Google a monopoly, but they completely abuse their monopoly power, and there are so many cases of that. So Google should be broken up for antitrust regulations. Instead, this thing is called Alphabet now, and Google's just one of the things it owns, and it just seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger. The area that's of most concern to me is that basically I see Google and Facebook as fronts for the deep state. And I think that whatever information goes into their database is also going into, military and government databases. This massive NSA data center in Utah that's, the size of 6 football fields or whatever. This has got our digital selves in it. And what they can tell about people from what they like on Facebook, from just from 68 likes, they can predict people's skin color, the way they're going to vote. And when you get up to 150, 200 likes on Facebook, they're able to tell more about you than your partner knows. And imagine, like, if I've been using Facebook for 10 years, they probably have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of likes that I've done over the years. And they have every email I ever sent, everything I ever purchased, everywhere I've ever been. This is all sitting on a computer attached to a digital version of me. And they can predict what I'm going to do in the future more accurately with simulations run on this digital version of me than I'm able to predict myself. So who controls that data and what do they do with it? It's a complete unknown. Private corporations should not have it. Absolutely. But also, I don't believe the government agencies should have it. I'd like to see a return to where defense was about defending the country from military threats overseas, rather than spying on the American people, feeding propaganda to the American people, and running all these, false flag psyops, what I call synthetic terror events, which, Obama passed legislation, the Smith Modernization Act, which meant it was completely legal for the CIA to do this type of stuff domestically. And, what we've seen since then is a huge explosion of, you had Wolfgang on the show with Sandy Hook, clearly a psyop, but San Bernardino, Las Vegas, we just see again and again, it's coming out more than monthly now, events are being run. And I don't think, even though Donald Trump is the leader of the United States, I don't think that he is the one responsible for these synthetic terror events. I think that what we're seeing is basically a civil war going on within the intelligence community. And it's sort of we the people versus the deep state. I believe Trump is a white hat that was recruited in by other white hats in military intelligence in the wake of 9/11, who they saw what happened in 9/11. They believe it was an inside job. And this group that's doing this type of thing should not be allowed to be in power. And that's what I think is behind the Q activity at the moment.
Okay, and you've been following the Q activity. What do you think? Do you think it's legitimate? Obviously, you think Trump is going after the deep state, which I think he is too. Interesting, you think he's not behind the psyops, because that may be true, but he still has to cover up for him. It seems like, obviously, because of having to take things step by step. Maybe. I mean, what's your opinion on the Q posts, and how come nothing's happened yet?
Well, I think some really pretty big things have happened. And the first one is, Q saying, look, Trump is going overseas, look out for massive changes in the world, and pointing to Saudi Arabia. And then immediately, like these changes in Saudi Arabia are just, it's impossible to overstate the importance and significance of what just happened there. Aramco is the largest corporation in the world. And when I was really heavily into the smart cities thing, I spent a lot of time in Dubai, because Dubai is a place where in the real estate industry, they try new things. And most of the real estate industry is completely risk averse. So if you ever go to Dubai, you'll see some of the most spectacular architecture that you've ever seen in the world. And it's sort of a hub for the entire Arab world. But from spending a lot of time there, I heard about this company, Aramco, which most people had never heard about. And back in, I guess, 07, 08, I heard that they just posted a $250 billion profit for the year. It's pretty amazing, this private corporation. The other thing I heard about it was that the Saudi royal family got 20% of Aramco, and the other 80% was owned by basically the oil giants that went and set this thing up. And this is the Lawrence of Arabia is basically the story of Western oligarchs, financing rebellion in the Middle East to seize control of the oil fields and establish Aramco. It's a true story of what really happened. And this House of Saud, it's not like they've been the kings of Saudi Arabia for 1,000 years. They were just, this tribe of Bedouin, camel traders that were chosen by the British government to be the frontmen for their oil venture. And, I think we are technologically moving out of the era of oil and fossil fuels. We certainly have technological solutions where those things aren't required anymore. A few years ago, the Rockefeller family sold their oil holdings, and many of the family members pulled out of oil. So they know something's up. Why are the Saudis going to sell Aramco now with this massive IPO? Maybe something's up with oil in the future. Maybe we're going to get the free energy technology. But anyway, so that was the first thing we saw from Q, this huge overhaul with trillions of dollars on the line. And then also, it hasn't really come out yet, but there are links between the Saudis that were arrested and 9/11. And so, if they're really going to go after 9/11, I mean, that would be absolutely huge. From my point of view, I'd be happy to see them just go after the Luciferian pedo cult and the child sex trafficking, and the satanic ritual abuse. I think that's the big problem. And as it's coming out, more and more people are realizing that the deep state is heavily tied to this, that the CIA has been running these compromise operations where people go back to a house, have some sort of illicit sexual encounter, get that recorded, and then this is used as leverage for them. And many politicians have been caught up in this sort of thing. If you look at where Q's posts have been going, he's talking about unraveling a lot of this stuff. The other thing that I think makes it credible is, he said that there's going to be social media disruptions. Look out. And then basically the next day, the president's Twitter went down for 11 minutes. I mean, that's unprecedented. And they said, it's just a disgruntled employee that did it on the way out. I mean, Twitter has thousands of employees, and surely not every one of them has the ability to just delete the president's Twitter account anytime they want. So I find that story a little bit suspicious. But if you look at what happened in the next week, there were major social media outages all around the world. Facebook Messenger went down, Snapchat went down, YouTube HD went down. There were many other ones as well. And if this is just some 4chan troll LARPing, how do they take Facebook Messenger down, right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And also we saw Q saying, "Hey, look out for the Rothschilds." Plus is code for the Rothschild. We got the Saudis. Rothschilds are next, and then suddenly we have this mysterious helicopter crash that you covered on the Rothschild estate, and men running from the woods. And it turns out the guy involved in the helicopter crash is the most experienced helicopter pilot in the UK. So if you were the head of the satanic pyramid and you needed an elite operative to pull some kind of stunt involving a helicopter, this is probably the guy that you would get. Is this guy so dumb that he flies his helicopter into a plane? That's impossible to me. So
yeah.
So that's Q says there are no coincidences, and a lot of these massive things have happened being coincidental. And then the final thing is all these sealed indictments, where some of the indictments have become public that were related to Uranium One, and we don't know where the rest of them are. Maybe it's all MS-13, maybe it's corruption, but there are now more than 2,000 of them. And the Trump political campaign, it was 40 or 50 people. So who are these 2,000 people, it can't be Trump's people. Also, we saw 7 indictments out of Little Rock, Arkansas. Well, we all know whose base Little Rock, Arkansas was, so it seems to be pointing in one direction. We've also seen John McCain, heavily promoted by the Rothschilds, walking around with this ankle boot on his right leg. Hillary Clinton also walking around with this ankle boot on her right leg, and her story like, I was running down the stairs in high heels holding a coffee.
Right.
Okay. And what was it, 3 months ago? And you've still got this thing on. And, someone had a YouTube video pointing out that the ankle boots that they're wearing appear to be fully sealed. And usually if you have something like that for an ankle injury, it's possible to take the boot off to have a shower or inspect the dressing or anything like that. But having it fully sealed is designed to not come off. So why would that be?
But I hadn't noticed that part, but it is curious that they're wearing exactly the same ankle boot too. And she got hers in the UK, supposedly, and he got his in the USA. So, okay, we have 2,000 sealed indictments. Everybody is waiting for the other shoe to drop. I thought it seemed like Q was saying something might happen last week with that cryptic post where it said U.S. risk this week, I think, God and country. And then there was a guy that called into the Alex Jones show a few weeks ago saying there would be a false flag. I had some indication from somebody I know that there might be something, and there still might be tomorrow, let's say. But what do you think? What do you think it needs for these indictments to be unsealed? What do you? Won't the half the country think there think that we have a dictator in office that's just rounding up his political opponents? How's it going to go down?
Yeah, and I think that's what's behind this Q psyop, and it is definitely a psyop, but that doesn't mean that everything involved in it is fake. But we had the New York Times coming out with an article talking about NSA's Q division, which is their sort of elite counterintelligence unit, and how terrible it was that all these people in such elite units were leaking information. And then Q said that was basically a declaration of war against what they're doing. Q said that there were going to be a bunch of false flags, and there have been some strange events. The church shooting, it seems like, the timing doesn't quite add up. Every single person being shot in the church and some people not going to the church. It's just like, a lot of the warning flags that we see when these things seem to be false flag events come up with these things. So, and if they were going to be a retaliation against this, sort of Trump movement, how would they retaliate? Well, shooting up a Jason Aldean concert, that seems like a bunch of Trump supporters. All these white folks in a rural church, that seems like a bunch of Trump supporters as well. So it sort of does seem a little bit of the target. But I think that when Trump took off for his overseas trip, I think that they really expected a much greater level of resistance than there was. And we saw on November the 4th with the Antifa protests that really just completely fizzled out. And that could have gone the other way. It could have been under Obama. We saw these, like the Ferguson riots, and that was cities literally on fire, which I know has always been a concern of the powers that be. So, I think that maybe they were anticipating a bunch of things to happen that didn't happen. Now, he said Tony Podesta would be arrested. Well, as far as we know, that didn't happen, but maybe it did. Certainly, John Podesta, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, these people have been freaking out on Twitter. You saw Roseanne with 372,000 followers. She posted a tweet, "Hey QAnon, please DM me," and her Twitter account's instantly taken out, instantly. And then when it came back up, it only had like 80,000 followers or something. How does a 4chan LARPer do something like that? So the other thing that Q has said is that everything is in motion, it's underway, and basically the plan can't be changed now. And he said that Trump can't directly get involved with this. And if you see, there's been some of these calls to appoint a special counsel to look into the Clinton campaign's collusion with Russia and the Uranium One dealings. And when Jeff Sessions was brought before the committee last week, he was extremely passionately against that. He was like, you know, you don't need a special counsel in every situation. And what that suggests to me is that there actually are legitimate prosecutions going on through the Department of Justice, where that's just going to be regular indictments, regular prosecutions, regular court cases, and it may be some time before these things even start to get linked together. But, at the same time, every month that goes and we don't see these people in jail and we see Hillary Clinton walking around giving speeches, people do lose faith and hope.
Yeah, well, and that's can be a psyop when that kind of thing happens, which it might have been with this helicopter, this marine extraction or expeditionary unit supposedly dropping at CIA headquarters in Langley, and that turning out to be fake news and getting a lot of people in a tizzy before that happened. So I was wondering how the end of the world unfolds. Are you expecting another big false flag? That's what maybe I'm expecting, is another big false flag like 9/11. Do you think that might happen?
I think there's always a possibility. I think that this has basically become the modus operandi now to do these false flags. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if there was perhaps one outside of the US that was somehow linked to it all.
It's hard to say. Okay. All right.
I don't know if we're going to get it tomorrow.
Well, Thanksgiving Day. I don't know if you guys you probably don't have that over there. Do you still have Black Friday over there? I hear that's been exported around the world.
No, we don't have that.
That's good. Lucky you guys. Okay, well, let's go into crypto. I don't think we'll have time to talk about Charles Manson, but everybody look into Charles Manson and the Tate murder psyop or hoax or whatever you want to call it. A huge operation from 1969. Let's talk about crypto, though, since you're an expert and I'm not. I'm always looking to talk to experts on this stuff. I know it's good to buy it. I think it's good to buy it right now, and I think it's the future. That's the word I'm getting from around people who know about it. You do some kind. Well, okay. So you said you might be willing to talk about the dangers of Bitcoin or where things will go with the splits and Bitcoin Cash and stuff. I said to my people to think about diversifying themselves from only having Bitcoin when this Bitcoin Cash thing suddenly came out. Then Bitcoin rebounded 30%. It's at all-time highs. But I still have a concern about transaction fees with that dang thing. I mean, you buy a $20 item, I think you might pay $5. I don't know if that's accurate. And it takes a long time to settle. So that's one of the concerns I have, is that when people start using it, they'll realize something like LiteCoin, it's the same, just cheaper. And then all of a sudden could completely lose faith in BTC because it's built on faith like any currency. So what do you think about all that?
Well, I think that what we've seen recently with Bitcoin price activity just in the last few weeks, they heard that there was going to be a fork and that everyone that held Bitcoin would get, new coins perhaps. So that drives people to go into the Bitcoin hoping they get it. And then they hear there's not going to be a fork and suddenly the price plummets. And we saw this interplay between Bitcoin price. As that was going down, the Bitcoin Cash price was going way the hell up. But Bitcoin bounced back very quickly. So it's a sign that there's manipulation going on in the marketplace. And there's some big moves afoot at the moment to bring in derivatives, which is basically the sort of options that they have on stock market trading, calls and puts, where you're taking a bet on the price to go up or down. And the reason they want to bring that in is it lets large institutional money hedge their bets so that they basically can't lose money. And so many commentators are saying that the introduction of derivatives is going to be fantastic for the Bitcoin price because you're going to get, the serious money coming into it. Right now, Bitcoin is sort of a competitor because it's a finite store of value. But there's nowhere near as much money in Bitcoin as there is in gold. But actually, as a store of value, it's mathematically superior to gold because we know exactly how many Bitcoins there are. We don't really know how much gold there is. There's been a lot of fakery and there's been a lot of blatant manipulation in the precious metals markets by people connected to the City of London and the Rothschilds and the central banksters. And one thing about Bitcoin is that we don't know who made it. We're told it's this one guy, Satoshi Nakamoto, who's now a multi-billionaire, but he's never spent any of his Bitcoin and he never wants to show his face. And it's all drafted in mystery. And, you know, it's possible that that's a true story, but I find it to be unlikely. It's much more likely that, you know, Bitcoin actually was created by the deep state, and this is the New World Order's goal of having, you know, one world currency. The Economist magazine, owned by the Rothschilds, they're known for having on their annual covers things that, you know, signify events to come in the years ahead. And in 1998, the cover of the Economist magazine was a phoenix holding some sort of coin in its mouth, sitting on a pile of burning money. And it said basically, you know, single world currency 20 years, which brings us to next year, 2018. And I think that we are really on track for, you know, cryptocurrency to be accepted globally next year. There are certain countries' central banks who are already doing it. An example I heard, and this is just something to think about with this, you know, the Greek financial crisis in 2014. They were looking, what can we do? How do we bail ourselves out? Goldman Sachs has screwed the country. And the leader of the opposition, one of the financial proposals he said was, why don't we convert the entire Greek economy to Bitcoin? Now, if they had done that in 2014, not only would have Greece lifted itself out of the hole financially, but the Greek people would be by far the richest people in the world. And, you know, that still remains that small, struggling countries like perhaps some of the South Pacific island nations that are facing being completely underwater or whatever, if they were to convert their entire economies to Bitcoin, they probably would see similar things. So I think over the medium term, Bitcoin, it's not going to go anywhere because I think it's being backed by the New World Order. But, you know, the old way of thinking is, well, you know, we've got all these currencies. Is Bitcoin superior to US dollar? Is it superior to gold? You know, is Ethereum going to be better than Bitcoin? Is LiteCoin going to be the one? We're trying to pick the one currency to rule them all. And I actually think that this is something very different, that there are going to be thousands of cryptocurrencies and potentially even in a few years, millions of them. And, you know, this is a power, you know, money is essentially a black magic spell. It's been created out of thin air and you're told that it has value. But the power to create this money is, you know, sat in the hands of the banksters, and it's been very tightly controlled for basically since money has existed, certainly since fiat currency has existed. But now the power to create currency is being given to the people, and we're going to see an explosion of them. So what do you do as an investor? You know, because if you buy into Bitcoin, look, it's probably going to go up, but it can go down very, very rapidly. You know, you could lose 30% of your wealth in 24 hours. So, and like you said on your show the other day, all of these currencies, they could go to zero for many reasons, for technical reasons, for reasons of popularity, for reasons of regulation. You know, it's possible they go to zero. So this is a little risky. So the strategy, I think, first of all, is you want to try to accumulate crypto any way you can. And particularly if you can accumulate Bitcoin and you just hold on to it. You don't try to trade it. You don't try to spend it. You just try to accumulate it however you can. Well, how to get it? Well, that's where some of these other currencies come in. And you don't have to just mine Bitcoin to create them or mine cryptocurrency. One way to create it is through content creation. That's sort of the new mining. And a great example of that is Steemit, where you can just write blog posts and you can get paid in Steem dollars. And there's an article of someone who was blogging away on Steemit for about 10 months, wrote all this stuff, didn't really think about it, and one day decided, hey, I'm going to go and look at what all the Steem I've accumulated is worth. And he added it up, and it was worth $100,000. He's suddenly able to quit his job and become a full-time blogger. And you know, that Steem that he's accumulated, in theory, over time, that'll go up in value as well if the supply is fixed. So you can accumulate crypto by creating it and mining it. And then the other way is the old investment philosophy: buy low and sell high. And you know, if you bought Bitcoin when it was first traded, it was less than 1 cent. And there was a 5-day period in July 2010 where it went from that price up to 8 cents. It went up 1,000% in a week. And there are many, many stories. If you bought Ethereum at its ICO, it goes from $1 to $360. How to get these massive, massive gains, these 1,000% plus gains. You want to get in on these things early. You want to buy at the lowest possible price, which is either at the ICO itself or even before, if you can get the pre-ICO prices.
And that's okay. And I think that's a transition to what I have a link for in my description. And I can't say I endorse it yet. I don't know how risky it is, but I still might get engaged in it. And you guys are welcome to. I want to hear you. Now you're involved with pre-ICO stuff where you can buy.
Yeah. So this fund, Etherical, it's ETHERICAL.io. And the idea is that they basically will buy into certain pre-ICOs, and when the ICO is complete, the value of the coins will increase, and they'll look at exiting some of the position to get that initial money back and make a profit that gets returned to the token holders as a dividend, and then keep the rest of the coins for the long term because they've basically paid for themselves. And if you buy Bitcoin at $8,000, it might go down to $6,000. But if you buy a coin at 1 cent, it's hard for it to go down much from that. So basically, if you want to get into this pre-ICO investing, you have to be able to analyze the companies involved. Is it a scam? Is it real? How is their technology? Is this going to work? Is there demand for a token like this? And the individual investor, it's sort of overwhelming because there are now thousands of these ICOs coming up all the time. But this is the sort of thing that I've been doing for many years, looking at angel and early stage investment in Silicon Valley. But the difference is that in the past, you have angel investment, then you do series A, B, and C rounds, then you have an IPO, and then the initial investors can cash out at a much higher multiple. But that period used to take 10 years or more. And now it's basically been condensed down into weeks or months, where a company is going from an idea and a piece of paper to being publicly traded as soon as the ICO is completed. And from an investor point of view, it adds a real benefit because you're not locked into the investment. If you want to get out, you can. The tokens are tradable. But the nature of cryptocurrency is also introducing models that weren't possible previously. So in the case of Etherical, you invest the money once and there's the potential to get paid several times. You'll get paid when there's a dividend from a successful exit. And you get paid again when the complete position is closed out if those underlying tokens go up. But also Etherical itself has its own tokens which are tradable. And so it's possible that those tokens go up in value even faster than the value of the investments it's making. And in the whole world of tokens, the underlying company, in theory, even if the underlying company didn't do anything and didn't produce any product, if demand was growing for the tokens could go up on their own. And so it's providing liquidity and the ability to get out of non-performing investments, but it's also providing multiple ways to get paid from the same investment. And if people are interested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, they want to get involved. I think everyone has the dream of, if only I could spend one LiteCoin, $70 odd, and I could turn that into $100,000 or $1 million. That'd be brilliant. And these type of things keep happening again and again and again in the world of crypto. But the way to do it is you have to buy in at the lowest price because that's how you get the highest percentage gain. So, if you buy into the Etherical fund, then this is basically, you've got experts that are doing this for you, that are making the decisions for you. And at the end of the day, it'll be the performance of the fund that counts. There's going to be funds and you'll be able to see which one has had consistently the best returns over time. But right now in the market, everything is brand new. And this is one of the very few funds that will pay a dividend out to token holders. So just simply having the coins means that you're going to get a ready stream of money coming back to you. So, I wouldn't put your life savings into it, but I would recommend people that want to learn about this stuff and get involved, get some crypto and buy into Etherical. And if you use the bonus code that Nathan is putting in the link to the show, then you'll be supporting Lift the Veil as well.
You will be, even though I can't say how safe it is, but you can look into it, and you guys are used to doing your own research. So I'll probably take, I mean, I don't really have anything to invest. A lot of, all the Bitcoin I have is from donations actually. And please feel free to do that, ladies and gentlemen. But it doesn't hurt if you want to put money in this. It sounds very interesting, and maybe not much downside for potentially a lot of, that's the big thing with crypto right now is, yes, your money could go to zero if it's all in one place, let's say, or it could. But the upside, you have to look at what the upside is, which is much, much higher than something like gold or silver right now, and then think about how much money you'd want to risk and something like that. But is it the kind of thing where you could put in like $20 a month and you know?
Well, the minimum investment is about $70. It's about one LiteCoin.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the strategy of investing every month is a very good idea. I actually heard about it from my sister, who's just an ordinary suburban housewife, but she has a group of her friends that get together in a little investor club, and they decided that instead of the share market, they would invest in crypto, and they all would try to invest $200 a month, and they'd get together every month and talk about what do they like to buy. Is it a good time to buy Bitcoin? Is the Ether better value in relation to Bitcoin? And I think if everyone started doing that, and whatever you can afford, but just every month on a regular basis, you'd think of this as a savings account and just start putting some money into accumulating the crypto. I think this is the type of financial strategy where people's lives can be totally transformed in just a few years. And I think diversification out of Bitcoin is probably a good idea. I mean, it's had such an incredible run up. I think there's definitely more upside ahead of Bitcoin. But I don't think that we're going to see the same, 10,000% gain in a year type of thing that we've had. I mean, there's a point where Bitcoin would become larger than all of the money in the world. And obviously, although that may be theoretically possible, I don't think that practically we're going to reach that point. So take maybe if you've had some recent gains in crypto, look at rolling them back into new coin offerings, either picking them yourself or letting someone else pick you, like with Ethereum. And then that's the way you can get those 1,000, 10,000% potential gains, strike it lucky, and then take that gain and then convert it into Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin's good as a medium to long-term store of value. I personally really like real estate, and it's starting to become easier to buy real estate with Bitcoin. So you may be able to accumulate enough real estate that then enough Bitcoin that you can then buy an investment apartment or something somewhere, and then you get monthly rent coming in from that in fiat currency, convert that back into crypto, put that into the altcoins, and start the whole cycle again.
Right. And you better tell us. So it's etherical.io. And then I have a link that in the description for the video and hopefully on my podcast that would give me something out of it. And I have a LiteCoin. I could invest in this because it's interesting to me. So I probably will do that. And I know Steve has a great track record for this kind of thing. What is your relationship, Steve, to this company, etherical.io?
So my company ZMint is helping companies get on the blockchain, and so Etherical's a client of ours. We're doing the software design for their token, and I'm also helping them out with their social media, which is why I'm here talking about it on YouTube. The other thing I should mention is that if you do use that bonus code, anyone who uses it will get 25% extra tokens that they're purchasing for themselves, and then get their own bonus code to recommend to other people. And because these tokens are going to return money to the holders, getting an extra 25% of them means you're going to be getting a bigger share of every time that's returned. The other cryptocurrency that I've been working with that I wouldn't mind mentioning briefly, it's called ShelterCoin, and it's sort of a different model from this entirely. It's what's known as a cause coin. So sheltercoin.io is the website. That it'll be changing a bit later on today after I get off the show, because they're about to go live with their white paper. But the idea behind ShelterCoin is how can we do a better job of disaster relief? And what we saw with these recent hurricanes that hit the US is almost non-stop advertising from all the usual suspects, the Red Cross and everyone, like, people are so devastated by this hurricane, and please send your money now. But the reality is that FEMA is extremely well funded, and that there's enough government money to pay all of the relief efforts needed. And the guy from the Red Cross was in front of some sort of congressional panel and was asked, well, how much of the donations you're being given actually go to the people in need of the donation? And he couldn't answer the question. And I think the reason he couldn't answer is it's actually zero. They're heavily advertising on TV for you to send money for the campaign, but the disaster relief people don't need it because the government is paying. And we saw this in Haiti as well after the earthquake. There was $500 million raised just by the Red Cross. And of that, they spent $125 million in overhead figuring out how to spend it, which left them with $375 million to be spent in Haiti. And they built 6 houses with that. And these are not mansions. These are tiny little shanty houses that probably cost a couple of $1,000 each. Where did that money go? So we the people are there. We want to support out our fellow humans in need when there's a disaster. These big institutions that have been created to get all the money and facilitate that, in fact, they're just looking after themselves. So how does the blockchain help? Well, first of all, there's an element of transparency that you can see where the money is going, what wallets it goes to, what transactions are made. But there's also an element of bringing people together with, together in a new economy and a new way of doing things. And I think that the best cryptocurrencies, the best new ones, are ones where there's an existing community there that can be brought closer together in cooperation. And in the world of disaster relief, the existing community is, first responders. There are so many volunteers that would just jump on the first plane and go help out with recovery from a disaster. All they need is a plane ticket and a place to stay. And there's plenty of money in theory to facilitate that. It just isn't happening. So by bringing the disaster and the disaster responders and the people in need much clearer, ShelterCoin is going to provide shelter camps. So there's an underlying business. They make a technology called ShiftPod, which is an advanced insulated tent. And although it's a high-tech tent, it's actually cost competitive with what the low-tech tents the United Nations are sending into disaster zones. So the money from the raised from the ShelterCoin ICO goes to basically creating these pre-packaged survival camps that will go wherever they're needed. And then people are able to support the specific camps directly if it's like, in their local area, or, if it's, some cause that they're particularly connected to. And the advantage of these cause coins, what's possible with crypto that wasn't available before is before in the world of philanthropy, you give your money to the Red Cross, you give $100 and you hope that some good gets done with that money. But, really it's the act of giving. You're doing the act of giving because it's the right thing to do and you can feel good about yourself participating in philanthropy. And you don't really think about, oh, well, that money's gone and I'm sad. You're happy. Then if you see later on that the money was used and put to good use, that gives you sort of a double reward. But you could contrast that with something like gambling, where you go in and go gambling, and if you win, you're really happy, and if you lose, you're really sad. Well, this is sort of mixing the two of those things together, because when you give your money to a cause coin, you get coins back. You get these digital tokens, and the tokens may actually go up in value if demand for the underlying service is increasing, and this is a hot new thing, and the coins go up. So it's not necessarily an investment, but it could be. Like you may give the money, and then you may get a reward back to yourself even more than the money you gave. And it's this is again, I guess, this example of how to get returns 2 or 3 times from doing the same activity. But in the case of the cause coin, you're not putting in thinking, oh, well, I'm going to make 1,000% on this. You're thinking, this is a great cause. I want to support the cause. And then down the track, if actually the tokens go up, well, what an added bonus. And, that probably would encourage you to do more of that type of philanthropy in the future.
All right. Okay. Got it. Well, I have to say, so it is really interesting stuff, and particularly the pre-ICO thing. And that's etherical.io. This other one is sheltercoin.io if you guys want to check it out. I'll ask you this. This will be kind of the last question. You've been very gracious to take time with me today. What do you own of those tokens in those 2 things right now? Do you have do you own some of that stuff?
Yeah, I would prefer not to answer that, Nathan.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me how much.
A public environment.
Since you're promoting it, that's why I asked. So because just so people realize.
I definitely own own tokens in both of those
Okay.
companies. And I've got some Bitcoin and I've got some Ether. I really like EOS as well at the moment. I don't own any. I was watching it trading pretty consistently between 50 and 70 cents, and it's just spiked to about $2. But I think that there's a lot more upside with EOS.
EOS.
Yeah, I think that you made a good call on LiteCoin as well. I think it's probably more than doubled since you first were telling your audience to have a look at that. And I think that LiteCoin has things that it's got in its Coinbase, and Coinbase is one of the simplest ways to get involved and start accumulating cryptocurrency and start buying it with your fiat currency. The number of users in Coinbase, every time I log onto it, they've gained another 100 or 200,000 users. And you can see that still. I'm giving some cryptocurrency talks actually here in Auckland. If anyone's around on December the 5th, come and see me speak. You can find out about that from zeemint.co/events. And I'm talking to people here who are quite sophisticated business people who've got experience in the technology world, and everyone's heard of Bitcoin. Everyone's interested in it. Everyone wants to get involved. But how many of them actually have it? It's still quite a small percent. And so, when this gets to the point where, our parents and, ordinary people working in retail jobs and things like that all have their own stash of cryptocurrency, that's when it's going to be really, really huge. And so I think that there's still, if people get involved now, there's still that sort of mega growth ahead of us. It's sort of like, I remember, when Amazon first went public and you could buy their stock for $2 or $3. There was a time after the 2000 financial crash where Apple stock was $8. And not only has it gone up so much since then, but there've been many stock splits and everything since then too. So you can't just look at the price. So I see cryptocurrency being where the internet was, in the mid to late 90s. It's the people that are involved can clearly see that this is the future. This is where the entire world is going. Get on it now. And other people are hesitant. Well, it's not like anything I've seen before. I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure how to start. Maybe I'll hold back. And if you hold back and you don't get involved and you sit there and watch it, perhaps you're safe and you're cautious, but you're missing out on these rags to riches stories. I'll give you a quick one. There's a taxi driver here in New Zealand, and he gave somebody a ride about 5 or 6 years ago, and they paid him in Bitcoin. $10, a $10 taxi ride got paid in Bitcoin. That's now worth $5 million. So that just one split second decision that taxi driver made. Whatever, for the sake of $10, I'll do it. Completely changed his life.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I try not to, pound it into people or anything, because you never know. I don't want people to lose their money and blame it on me or anything. But yeah, I see it the same way. Is that people are going to look now, people who are saying it's a bubble, they're going to look at 8,000 and say, oh my God, I got in when it was 8,000. I should have gotten in then. So anyway, awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Steve. You gave me a ton of information and a great show today. And I'm going to take calls, guys. So anyway, see you, Steve. Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on.
Okay. Cheers, Nathan.
Cheers.
See everybody.
All right, cool. All right. I'm going to take calls, guys. I wasn't able to take calls with him, so I'll just take calls. You guys can call me about that. It's the last day before the holidays, so there's my number. Oh, I didn't even put up my donations thing. Twitch thing. I can put up my Discord chat thing. Oh, Discord invite. Should show up. It's here. It might load. There it is. 40 people online. Discord chat's a good place to go if you're in the YouTube chat, if you're in the Twitch chat. 650-GAY-TAXI. You can go to that link, this link here, and type in the lowercase and uppercase letters the way it shows. And you can be time warped into my chat. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Steve Outtrim. He's a great guest. I like him. Thanks. I got to tell him thanks for coming on the show. I'm just taking calls because it's the last day before the holiday. I wondered if anybody had anything important to say. And I'll be here for live coverage when shit hits the fan, which might be tomorrow. Might be never. Shit might not hit the fan. That might not be a thing. That was a great show. Oops, I'm missing calls. Oops, okay, okay. I understand. I have to turn my phone on. Okay, sorry about that missed call. Steve is good. He knows a lot of stuff. I'll probably invest in that thing. Probably make a lot of money. So go ahead if you feel like it. People said I'm David Seaman now. Well, I just gave him a... Steve's good for information, so I let him have a platform. This is Nathan. You're on the air.
Hey, Nathan. It's Chronic. How you doing?
What's up, Chronic?
I really like the show today. I like Steve Outtrim. I think he was a good guest. I like the conversation about cryptocurrency.
Oh, you did? Good.
Yeah. Cryptography and crypto is something I have a lot of interest in. And I think he made a good point about how small a percentage people have that actually hold tokens, and it really needs to be widespread before it's powerful in the world.
Do you think that's the way it's going, though, that it's going to become widespread? I mean, that's what people are saying, is that, yeah, and what I'm thinking.
It definitely will. And what needs to happen is, and I believe a bank, and I'm looking for the article, is going to have a Bitcoin offering. And what I'm hoping is they will have a mechanism that will give you a Bitcoin-backed transaction infrastructure that allows you to use Bitcoin to pay for a cup of coffee, pay for an Uber, pay for all the normal things you pay for, and that transaction isn't backed by dollars; it's backed by Bitcoin. And you can hold an account not in fiat currency, but Bitcoin.
Right.
And once we have that transaction infrastructure in place, and the blockchain is the ledger, I'm hoping we can do something like this. Like right now, Coinbase is like a huge, like he mentioned this. This is like a huge point of entry for people converting fiat to crypto. Well, there's also like a ton of open source solutions for holding an offline wallet or even an online wallet that you can sync between multiple devices. And I don't like storing my tokens in Coinbase. I maybe purchase some of them, but I will then transfer them to another wallet so that I hold my tokens.
Right.
But I'm hoping that developers can get together and create that infrastructure that allows you to use a payment device like a cell phone, not in the way that we do now with like cameras and QR codes. That's very clunky, but you can go to McDonald's and use Apple Pay backed by a debit card. But once you could do Apple Pay and that's backed by crypto, and the ledger is built into the blockchain, that's when it will truly be powerful.
Yeah.
Once you can swipe a card at a drugstore and pay for a bottle of Advil, and that is paid for by crypto, that's when things will truly change.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and it'll start with somebody like Amazon probably deciding that they're ready to take Bitcoin for transactions the way Overstock.com does, and some other retailers do right now. That's where I see possibly some trouble for Bitcoin too, because it costs so much right now for a transaction and it takes so long to settle. Seems like there are other alternatives that are cheaper and faster, like LiteCoin, for example. And then there are other up and coming cryptos like Ripple, which is being integrated with banks and institutions, it seems like. But you're right. That's when things that's why there's so much potential for growth, because right now we're in such, look at the growth it's seen already, and still nobody owns Bitcoin, really. In the grand scheme of things, nobody has it. It's such a small percentage of people. So when it moves into, like Steve said, your mom and dad or local investment clubs, like he was saying, then that's why you see more and more growth. So what do you think it will do to change the world? I mean, how do you think it helps things?
Well, it decentralizes everything. It takes the power of money out of the hands of transnational banks. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to a good future. And what do you own, or what do you like?
Right now, I like Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, and LiteCoin.
Yeah. Do you own all four?
Yes.
Where do you get Bitcoin Cash? Can someone buy? Is it easy to buy?
You can trade it on Kraken. That's a good exchange.
Okay. I'll have to look at that exchange.
And if you had stored your Bitcoin in a wallet that supported Bitcoin Cash, when it forked, you were given the equal amount of tokens in Bitcoin Cash.
Right.
Like for free. It was basically free money. This did not happen if you were a Coinbase user.
I thought it was going to show up eventually on Coinbase, that they're still holding on to it. I thought that was the announcement they made. That even though I don't know for sure.
I don't keep up because, like I said, I don't store my tokens in Coinbase.
Right. Okay, got it. All right, cool.
I like sell them to myself or whatever.
Right, exactly. I got it. All right, cool. Thanks, Chronic. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Thank you for the show, and yeah, you take it easy, man. Peace.
All right, cool. All right, that's Chronic. Blazing Chronic. Good call about crypto. Silver and gold still, I think they're up today. I think silver and gold are up today, but so is crypto. You know, Litecoin's up 2.5%, Bitcoin's up 2%, Ether's up 4.5%, Ripple's up almost 4%. Just kind of keeps going. Come on. This is Nathan. You're on the air.
Hey, Nathan. It's Ryan. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Ryan. How are you doing?
Good, man. A lot has happened since I talked to you last.
A lot is happening in the world every day, it seems like.
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, I think what your show touched on today, if I were to forward into the future 5 years from now, stock is going to work. We're subverting the stock ownership system through these companies that are able to take profits and work in the Coinbase system. They're going to create their own token. And so it's going to be a radical transformation. And right now, Wall Street is shitting itself a little bit as they start to realize the power. We haven't seen what they're going to do from a regulation standpoint. So I think that'll be Bitcoin's next hurdle. The thing that worries me with Bitcoin is if one of these viruses is launched again, but instead of Russia, it's every hospital in the U.S. is shut down until someone is paid a Bitcoin. That's going to be bad marketing for them.
Right.
So
do you think something
it's an exciting...
You think something like that might happen?
Yeah,
like a Bitcoin false flag, basically? Like a Bitcoin false flag kind of thing?
Yeah, where you shut down, you encrypt everybody's data, and they send you a Bitcoin to get your data back.
Right.
They've already shown that they can do this. And so, that's the downside of Bitcoin is, when you're buying it, some of the people that were the prior owners were killing people and asking to be paid in Bitcoin. So it's got a dark, not saying that dollar doesn't have that same issue, but it's very suspect that the original owner would not spend any of his Bitcoin. Was that money put to a trust? Who owns that? You know, obviously he doesn't own it personally. So there's some very interesting questions around the currency. And I wish someone would do a documentary about some of these recent billionaires that have just come onto the scene because they wanted to get out of the dollar. I mean, what a fucking fascinating rags to riches story.
Yeah, no kidding. For I guess there are a number of Bitcoin millionaires and billionaires out there right now. If they sold their Bitcoin, or they're just Bitcoin billionaires, you know, they're billionaires on paper until they turn it back into fiat. But
once it becomes amazing. Regulated by Wall Street, and these are, you know, this is legitimately considered like a cryptocurrency, then these guys are going to be able to, if they want, get into the Fortune, you know, 50 guys, the richest 50 people in the world, and you're going to start seeing some different names pop up if they're honest about it, if they choose to be.
You mean different names pop up as being owners in crypto? What do you mean? Yeah,
like you know, Sam Walton is beat by a guy that started Bitcoin.
Oh, right.
You know, that's what's interesting. I think is it's a complete paradigm shift. And the downside is in these Wild West markets, it's kind of like the gold rush of California. You know, you can there's different business models. You can be a shovel company that's selling the tools, but there's a lot of robbery in the sense of fraud products that were never going to come out, and they're just trying to taint the blockchain brand, so to speak.
Right. Well, they're going to keep doing that for sure. I think that people are believers, you know. I think people who own Bitcoin really believe in it. And that's why and there's been manipulation of it too. It seems like maybe from a institutional level, perhaps, or from the Bitcoin whales. But would you welcome the changes that would be coming because of it?
Oh yeah. I think there was 84 pending applications for institutional lenders to get involved with Bitcoin. One argument I would have for them is I don't think it's wise to create the derivatives and the shorting of the market. I know that the big guys love that because they can control price, but I just right now we don't have that feature. So if the institutions want to get in, I would predict that they would short the hell out of the market once they create the derivatives, crash the price, so that they can now move their buddies' money into the currency. And so I just don't like short selling and what that can do. Basically, the more money wins in that environment, and they can move the market artificially. So I don't like that. So I just hope that all these things are being considered by the bright people that have gotten us this far. And I do feel that there's a theme for we the people. There's a purity of a democracy type representation just by the fact that we know the supply. Technically, we don't know exactly how much gold is in the world, but we do know exactly how much Bitcoin is in, and we can predict based on those models. Just knowing a true supply number is a fascinating thing as far as its potentials and transparency.
Yeah.
Hey, before I let you go, the other day we talked about Creature of Jekyll Island.
Yeah.
And I saw on Siemens' show, David Wilcock brought it up a few days after we were talking about it. So I just hope that you do read that, because that is a nice peek behind a certain curtain.
Yeah, I'm going to read it. I probably have to pay for it, right? On Amazon Books or something like that, or...
I don't know. You could probably just find it. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be around. I'll read it for sure. I've been saying in my private life that I'm going to read it because of you telling me, because I've heard about it from a number of people, and I trust that it is something worth getting into. So I'll do that.
Yeah. Hey man, have a great Turkey Day or drumstick. Get that drumstick, and we'll talk soon, buddy.
All right, cool. All right, Ryan, have a good Thanksgiving. I don't eat meat, ladies and gentlemen, and I certainly never really ate turkey because turkey's dry. Although people deep fry their turkeys now, so it's better. This phone's open again. Thanks for the nice calls so far. I'll keep on for a while. I won't be live tomorrow unless something happens. Something might. I'm thinking something might. Believe it or not. I'll be going live when shit hits the fan, as they say. Oh, did you see my coffee mug? Here, I have to hold it backwards. Or I have to hold it with my left hand. See? There's some tea in here. It's cold. LTV mug, LTV shirt. It's all on my website, lifttheveil411.com. That's lifttheveil411.com. That website. You can get stuff. It's shopping season, right? This is the website right here, lifttheveil411.com. And there's your gear. And I think I have it all set to flat rate shipping. Shipping just absolutely murders you in retail. But you can get multiple things. You can get stickers if you want something. If you want to support the show and you want cheap shipping, that ships all over the world for cheap. So you can support me all the way from New Zealand, for example. All the way from New Zealand. I asked Steve about what he owned in those companies. It was just to let everybody know what his interest was in promoting it, of course, because we're very transparent here. I didn't mean to get into personal details with Steve, though. I wasn't trying to find out his finances. 650-429-8294. I'll take one more call since it's not going crazy. It's the day before the holidays. Had a great guest. Want to focus on that mostly. We already talked more about cryptocurrencies, which is great. Oh, polo shirts. I was wearing it earlier today. I was wearing my Nazi polo shirt earlier today. I can wear it for the show. Oh, I think I changed. Because I can't wear anything in the house because Doshi sheds all over it. Where's Doshi? Oh, he was over there. I'll take one more call if it happens in some kind of moment of time. It's hard. The thing is, everybody wants different things, but I can only afford to make things as it comes. It's actually expensive. You have to put in an investment. So the black t-shirt did really well, or, pretty well. It's mostly sold out. The black t-shirt is sold out in large and extra large. That was a European cut shirt. So the mediums and smalls left are great for the ladies. It's a nice European cut, and it shrinks when you wash it too, if you dry it. And the white shirts are more standard American size. Those are these right here. I have pictures of me wearing it and stuff. It's cool. First edition, they're all numbered, signed, and stamped. So it's actually special stuff. That's why the first edition black shirt's pretty much sold out quick. I mean, for having 3,000 subscribers. Do I have 3,000 subscribers today? I wonder. Let's see. Does it say? It doesn't say the number of subscribers next to my thing. I think I have 3,000 now. God bless America. I should have 50,000 if they hadn't shut down my channels. Okay, I'll close the phone. You guys don't want to call in? Great. I'm done early. Beautiful here in California. Might go to the beach again today. I'm just trying to make you jealous. Waiting for something to happen, really. And then you'll see, you'll tune in here, and this is where everybody's going to go for the news when that happens. So I put up a new video on Patreon for my $5 donors. You can support me at patreon.com/lifttheveil or paypal.me/lifttheveil. If you don't want to buy anything, you don't have to. You don't have to be a consumer. But it is Black Friday on Friday, and you can be a consumer. Okay? Great. Have a great Thanksgiving. Glad I was able to do a live show for you today. I'm going to miss you on my day off. I might be back Friday. The time I normally do the show, I've been pretty good about sticking to, at least the primetime show, although I show up earlier sometimes. So please subscribe and hit your bell for notifications, or follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/lifttheveil, where I'm live now with about 50 people tuned in. And you get notifications there. And otherwise, join me at 1:11 p.m. Pacific time, 4:11 p.m. Eastern time for the Lift the Veil show. Okay, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. That is what it is.